Hey, what is up everybody, it's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and with the confirmation that we are entering the final saga in the One Piece story, and with Oda personally confirming that he is about to draw all the mysteries that we have been wondering about for 25 years, it is the perfect time to talk about Luffy's ultimate power. Is this final saga, which will feature massive showdowns with Blackbeard, the world government, and more, going to unlock new powers within Luffy? Powers that take him even beyond Gear 5. Gear 5 is still fairly new to us, but will this be his final form for the rest of the series? Or can we expect one more ultimate power-up as the story reaches its long-awaited climax? In this video, we will talk about what Luffy's ultimate power-up and final form might look like, and where his powers could possibly go beyond Gear 5, so let's get into it. You guys know the drill. If you enjoy our One Piece content, leave a quick like and comment. It only takes a second, but it really helps us out with that YouTube algorithm. And of course, if you're new to the channel or you've been watching us but you just haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, remember that subscribing right now and hitting that notification bell is a completely free but very real way of directly supporting the channel. Finally, this video will contain One Piece manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. Okay, so when we think of gears, we often think about cars, and many people have compared Luffy's gear-based power system to the gears of a car. Many cars have 5 forward gears and the reverse gear, although other cars do have 6 forward gears plus reverse. But is it possible that after Gear 5, Luffy may not be going into a Gear 6, but instead in reverse? And if so, what would that even mean? Well, in order for a reverse gear to actually be a cool power-up, it would have to involve more than just Luffy moving backwards or something. I mean, sure, Luffy trying to attack opponents with his back and buttocks would be pretty confusing at first, and it might catch some opponents off guard, but that's hardly something that deserves being referred to as a new gear. However, if that reversing part was referring to something like reversing time, then we might be onto something. Picture this. During the final epic clash between the Straw Hats and the Blackbeard Pirates, or between the Straw Hats and the world government, one of the people closest to Luffy is killed. Imagine Zoro or Sanji or any of the Straw Hats dying right in front of Luffy, and he is completely powerless to protect them because maybe he's already injured or his hands are full with another opponent. This would be absolutely devastating for Luffy, and it could trigger a fundamental break within him, a break that could have a radical effect on his awakened devil fruit. We know that the Nika fruit symbolizes freedom itself, and that once it awakens, it frees its user to do practically anything that is within the grasp of his imagination. In the moment when one of his closest friends dies right in front of him, the one thing that Luffy would want to do more than anything else in this world, and with the force of his entire being, is to turn back time so that he can prevent his friend's death from happening. So, what if in that very moment, Gear Reverse is unlocked? The power of Luffy's will and imagination allows him to rewind time, if only for a second or two, allowing him to save his friend's life before they are killed. From that point onward, Luffy can turn back time by a second or two whenever he is in a difficult position, which allows him to gain the upper hand in battle against even the strongest opponent. Now yes, this would be cool to see, and it could function similarly to Bismarck Waldstein's Geass in Code Geass. Bismarck can see a few seconds into the future, and this allows him to anticipate his opponent's next move. If Luffy could rewind time by a few seconds, it would have a similar effect. He would be able to anticipate his opponent's attacks and counter them by reversing time to before the attack was even launched. But although this could be interesting to see, it would also be really overpowered and pretty freaking broken. Unless there were some serious limitations to using this ability, all of Luffy's future fights would lose their tension since we know that Luffy will be able to outmaneuver his opponent every time. This problem could be alleviated if Luffy can only use Gear Reverse on rare occasions or when the situation is particularly dire, but not all the time. Another way to potentially alleviate the brokenness of such a power would be to make it very difficult to control, which means that Luffy could actually lose control of Gear Reverse and cause massive problems for himself and his friends by messing with time itself. There is a decently popular theory out there that states that Luffy could actually be the original Joy Boy who ended up getting stuck in a time loop. For example, he may have unlocked Gear Reverse, but he lost control of the power and it eventually sent him too far back in time, all the way back to the Void Century. Since Luffy doesn't have the ability to jump forward in time, he became the original historical Joy Boy, the man who fought alongside the Ancient Kingdom, the man who left a treasure on Laugh Tale, and the man who left that apology on Fishman Island. The reason why Roger laughed when he got to Laugh Tale was because he realized that the man he had been looking for hasn't even been born yet. And that is why Roger says that he wishes that he could have lived in Joy Boy's time. After all, if Toki's Devil Fruit could bring her from the Void Century all the way up to the present time, then who's to say that a godly Devil Fruit like Nika can't bring its user back to the Void Century? Now, of course, a lot of us One Piece YouTubers like to go crazy with these time-traveling theories because it's fun to think about such hypotheticals. But realistically, any storyline that features Luffy traveling back in time would be incredibly difficult to pull off. And any time loop is a potential disaster when it comes to plot cohesion. So while I could potentially see Luffy unlocking Gear Reverse and gaining the power to go back in time by like a second or two, I don't see him going all the way back to the Void Century or getting stuck in a time loop. I could be wrong here, but time loops are a narrative minefield full of potential plot holes, so I just don't think that Oda is going to go in that direction. Let me know what you guys think about Luffy potentially traveling back in time down in the comments. Oh, and while you're at it, don't forget to feed that ruthless YouTube algorithm by hitting that like button. Alright, now let's bring in Axel to talk about another possible theory for what Gear 6 might look like.
As Animac just mentioned, as YouTubers we are legally required to give some of the more crazy and outlandish theories that we have first. After all, this is the world of anime and manga, and if you're not gonna go crazy with your imagination, then you're just missing out on a lot of really fun opportunities. And speaking of imagination, as the Gorosei explained, the true power of the Nika fruit is within the imagination of its user. As we've seen with Luffy becoming more and more confident and experienced with his Devil Fruit, his abilities have all become increasingly complicated and creative. He isn't just throwing long punches, he is boosting his blood flow, he is inflating his arms, he is taking on entirely new forms, and essentially becoming a full-on rubber hose cartoon when his fruit awakens and he enters Gear 5. And at the point where imagination being made real is on the table, it's kind of hard to think of a next step. I mean, what's more powerful than your imagination being reality? Well, this idea isn't exactly a Gear 6 per se, but I think of it more as a final point for Gear 5. Not a new form in itself, but the full actualization of the current form. And most importantly, this brings themes of imagination full circle into the core theme of the entire show, that of course being dreams. The idea at the basis of One Piece is to follow your dreams no matter how crazy or ridiculous they are. And a seeming requirement for being a Straw Hat has always been that you need to have one of those crazy dreams. Not just the Straw Hats though, the slaves of the world nobles wish that they could be free, just as Nika had freed them in the past. The people of Fishman Island wish to be able to live as equals under the sun, and so on and so on, and I think that this will be the ultimate quote-unquote power of Gear 5. It won't be that Luffy is limited only by his imagination, it will be that Luffy will allow the dreams of those around him to be unlimited by reality. In essence, Luffy will become a man who can make the dreams of those around him come true. And again, this is more of a symbolic actualization than a true new form, but I do think that it's something cool that fits into the themes of the story.
Yet another possible direction that Gear 6 could take us in is leaning into the Sun God aspect of Sun God Nika. There has been a lot of debate about how much the original Joy Boy, who was almost certainly the previous owner of the Nika Devil Fruit, is influencing the actions and decisions of Luffy after his Devil Fruit awakening. All the laughing and joy that Gear 5 Luffy exhibits during fights suggests that Joy Boy's will may be having an effect on him. But I think that we'd all agree that overall, Luffy is still Luffy. His personality, his goals, and his dreams have not changed because of his Devil Fruit awakening. But what if Gear 6 takes Luffy's transformation to a whole other level, and instead of just being a man called Monkey D. Luffy, our protagonist turns into an actual godly being, at least temporarily? What if he somehow becomes one with Joy Boy and Sun God Nika, to the point that he becomes almost unrecognizable to us for the duration of that transformation? Think of this as Luffy entering some sort of avatar state and becoming a godlike being with the ability to unlock powers that he himself never even dreamed of. We can assume that, at least initially, Luffy may not be able to control himself in this state, so his personality could change. He may behave more like a stoic, godlike being and less like the goofy and energetic person he normally is. This might also be where the power of the voice of all things finally comes into play. This strange telepathic ability is probably the least developed aspect of the One Piece power system. And with the story in its final stage, and with Oda directly confirming that he is now going to draw all of the mysteries of this world, we can be sure that the voice of all things will finally be explained. Perhaps Luffy, in his Sun God Gear 6 form, will be able to tap into this power more than anyone before him, which will allow him to gain access to new knowledge and new abilities that he never had before. He may even gain the ability to control other creatures such as Zunesha and command them to do what he wants. He could also gain access to the hidden knowledge and powers possessed by every previous holder of the Nika Devil Fruit, including of course the original Joy Boy from the Void Century. I find this concept to be pretty interesting because the possibility that Luffy might lose control of himself in this form, at least temporarily, could create an interesting conflict as the Straw Hats try their best to bring Sun God Luffy back to his senses. I know that a lot of people hate the idea of the original Joy Boy or Sun God Nika somehow possessing Luffy and taking away his individuality. And I agree that this would be a terrible idea if it were permanent. But having Luffy temporarily lose his senses as he evolves into a godly being, and then fighting to regain his individuality while still being able to use the new power-up, could be a really interesting plot point if it is handled well. Granted, that is a pretty big if.
Finally, you know if Animac is bringing me on for a video, he probably wants me to talk about history or mythology, so let's talk about some sun gods. Specifically, in Norse mythology, we have the god Sol. In Greek mythology, there's Helios, the Egyptian god Ra, not that one, the real one, and the Hindu god Surya. These all share the fact that they are gods of the sun, but more importantly, they guide the sun across the sky. In Norse mythology, after the sun was created by the molten sparks of Muspelheim, Sol was charged with leading its path using a chariot and 2 horses called Arvak and Alsvin. All the while, Sol himself was being chased by the great wolf Skoll. Helios in Greek myth, who is often conflated with Apollo, has the same responsibility, minus the wolf. He still uses his chariot, and he actually has 4 flaming horses, which is just objectively cooler. Ra, the embodiment of the sun for ancient Egyptians, would ride his barge across the heavens during the day and then descend into the underworld at night. And Surya, much like Helios, also guided the sun with the chariot and 7 horses. And this is far from a comprehensive list, as there are tons of other deities who do the same kind of thing, but the important thing here is that we have a sun god riding something and pulling the sun behind them. Now, let's revisit an older theory that we shared on the channel a while ago, in which Animac talked about the possibility of the Nika fruit being Uranos in some way or another. He continued that Vivi would hold the key to finding Pluton, as she's a Nefertari, and Shirahoshi obviously is Poseidon, essentially linking the 3 ancient weapons to people with specific abilities rather than tangible things. And here's the last jump that we need to make by combining those ancient weapons with the sun deities from around our world. Although, admittedly, we do need to make a few changes. In our world, nations are connected by roads, so we often saw things like chariots being used in mythology. But in a world like One Piece, where everything is mostly ocean, it would make sense to use a ship instead. And similarly, horses would have to be dropped, and we could replace them with something like Sea Kings. So altogether, we have our sun god, Luffy, riding atop his chariot, a ship like Pluton, and being pulled by his steeds, the Sea Kings. In this theory, we're saying that Luffy's final form is unlocked by awakening his fruit, embodying Nika, and coming in contact with both Poseidon and Pluton. It's this union of the three ancient weapons, all coming together in one piece. And just as our own sun deities had done, following this union as it set sail would bring about a new dawn. Personally, I like these more symbolic evolutions of Gear 5th a lot more than the idea of a possible Gear 6 or Gear Reversal, but definitely let us know in the comments which you like best for the future of Luffy's abilities.
Thanks a lot, Axel. I really liked that last theory, and it would make for such a great climax to the story as it brings all of these different components together into one piece. Guys, show Axel some love by checking out his own YouTube channel, link in the description. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want us to keep it going with the One Piece content, don't forget to like and leave a comment. Do you believe that Luffy will receive another major power-up after Gear 5? And if so, what do you think that power is going to look like? What new abilities is this final form going to grant Luffy? Let me know down below. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. It is a completely free and quick way to directly support the channel. It helps me out a lot. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.